E-Content Development Course, Business Research Methods Topic, Experimental Causal Inferential Research Design, Part 1. Introduction to Experimental Causal Inferential Research Design. Experimental design, also known as causal research or hypothesis testing design, is most accurate research design among all other research designs. It was applied first in 1908 to psychosocial and educational research. Professor R.A. Fisher is the eminent person to contribute experimental design. In experimental design, researcher is interested to know the cause and effect relationship between variables and accurately establishing the effect of independent variable on dependent variable and generalizing it. Experimental design is one where researcher tries to control or manipulate the one or more variables to study the cause and effect relationship between dependent and independent variable. This intervention of researcher in control or manipulation is termed as experimentation. Experimentation is the process of establishing causal relationship and generalizing it to large group. Experimental design may be lab experiment, which are executed in artificial settings or field. Experiment which are conducted in natural environment. Whether it is lab experiment or field experiment, the main purpose of experimental design are 1. To establish causal relationship between variables. 2. To draw inference for large setting based on experiment research, to generalize the inference. Before understanding experimental design, let us understand the concept of causal relationship. Cause and effect relationship is the probabilistic expectation that one variable is the cause or means to produce another variable or factor. Change in one variable or factor is a cause that will create an effect on other variable by causing considerable change in it. Cause and effect relationship between variables is difficult to exhibit practically. But cause and effect relationship exists, and this existence and degree of variation in dependent variable with change in independent variable has to be proved and justifiable. There are many instances in business research where researcher is interested to study cause and effect relationship. Price, quality, packaging, service, competitors' price, advertisement expenditure on sales, training and employee productivity, salary and employee retention, salary and performance, level of income and shopping frequency, life skill training and behavior, and so on. In any causal study, researcher is keen to explain the variation in dependent variable due to change in independent variable. For example, manager wants to know how much change in productivity of employees can be attributed to training program. For this purpose, he should conduct an experiment to confirm training program leads to variation in productivity, wherein independent variable is training program and employee productivity is a dependent variable. Some examples where experiments are conducted to establish cause and effect relationship are: times advertising on which popular TV show leads to sales increase. Times can we increase our sales of four-wheeler by providing free service for first 6 months? Times which cuisine in a hotel increases customer base, North Indian or Chinese? Times will introducing daycare for babies of female employees increases work involvement? Times whether new packaging leads to increase in sales. The main advantage of conducting an experiment is that researcher is more accurate in establishing cause and effect relationship among variables as he can control the external factors. Researcher can isolate the external factors that create variation in dependent variable. Experiments can be repeated many times to confirm the correctness of inference drawn. But while conducting experiment, researcher should keep in mind the cost and time involved to conduct the experiment. If it is beyond the budget, then it turns to be expensive. If time taken for experimentation is longer, then generalization of result and inferences may not hold good for real world. Experimental research design is suitable in those situations wherein researcher has complete knowledge about problem area. He has clearly worded research hypothesis and identified study variables and interested to establish cause and effect relationship between variables. Cause and effect relationship. Sometimes two variables seem to be related, but there will be absence of cause and effect relationship between them. In order to confirm whether two variables have cause and effect relationship, following aspects is looked for. The diagram clearly represents the aspects to be checked for establishing causation. Diagram 5.1 Causation check. 1. Association between variables. If two variables, say x and y, are said to have causal relationship, then it is mandatory that they should have association. That means both should simultaneously occur or they should appear together. Whenever x occur, y also should be present. This is termed as concomitant variation. It is occurrence of two events that change together. For example, change in price and change in sales if happens simultaneously, then it may be due to cause and effect relationship between price and sales. But mere association between variables is not enough to confirm causal relationship. There may be another factor that can affect sales and price. Say here it is advertisement expenditure, which is altering price and sales. Therefore, researcher, in addition to association, he should also observe timing of occurrence of variables. 2. Time order of variables. If two variables, say x and y, are said to have causal relationship, then one should always precede the other. Sequential order is followed in appearance occurrence of variables. One variable should appear first, which the cause of, and this should bring change or effect in other variable. Cause variable should precede the effect variable. Change in price should bring change in sales. In other words, change in sales should follow change in price. Then researcher may conclude that if price changes, then sales also will change. Again, researcher should confirm that the change in price and sales are not due to effect created by any other variable. 3. Absence of other causal factors. Whenever researcher tries to establish causal relationship, he should confirm that there is no influence of any external variable other than the two study variables. If x and y is the two variables which are varying due to third variable z, then it is the other causal factor. If there are other causal factors, then it should be either controlled or removed to study causal relationship between x and y. If price of the product and sales are altered due to advertisement expenditure, then researcher cannot establish causal relationship between price of the product and sales. Concepts used in experiments. Before getting deeper into experimental design, let us understand some basic concepts used in experiments. Dependent and independent variable, a feature, characteristic, concept or an attribute which can assume any different quantitative value is nothing but a variable. A variable which changes or varies due to other variable is called dependent variable, and the variable which creates or brings change is independent variable. Dependent variable is altered due to change in independent variable. For example, weight of a person depends upon age, then age is independent variable, and weight which change due to change in age is a dependent variable. Similarly, performance of employees is a dependent variable and training program is an independent variable that influences performance. Extraneous variable. These are the factors other than independent variable and are not related to the study but bring change in dependent variable. They are external to the study, but their effect on dependent variable cannot be ignored. In such instances, either researcher should remove or control the extraneous variable. If variation in weight is not just from age but due to lifestyle of the person, then lifestyle is the extraneous variable. Variation caused in dependent variable, say weight, is due to external variable, say lifestyle. The variation in dependent variable due to external factors is termed as experimental errors. The researcher successfully establishes causal relation only when experimental errors are removed or totally controlled. Control. It refers to a setting or a situation where the effect of extraneous variable on dependent variable is completely removed. It is a study situation where cause and effect between only dependent and independent variable is found and influence of external factors is totally removed. Test units. These are the units of analysis which may be individual, group, organization or any geographical area. In our example of weight and age, individual persons are the test units. Experiments. It is the process of examining whether the research hypothesis is true or not. It is a controlled setting wherein one or two independent variables are manipulated to test their effect on dependent variable. Before conducting an experiment, researcher should be clear about how to control independent variable, how to measure dependent variables, how to deal with external factors or extraneous variable, test units to be used, etc. The aim of conducting an experimental research is to times to draw valid inference about effect of independent variable on dependent variable, which means to achieve internal validity, times to generalize the conclusions drawn, which means external validity. Internal validity. Factors affecting internal validity of the experiment. Times history, times maturation, times testing, times instrumentation, times selection, times statistical regression, times experimental mortality. History. In experiments, history refers to the influence or effect of any uncontrollable factor on dependent variable which alters the causation between study variables. The researcher cannot predict the occurrence of this variable, and it occurs during experimentation, and thereby the researcher finds it difficult to draw inference about cause and effect relationship. For example, a company wants to study the effect of special nutrition ingredient added to its health drink on children's weight gain. Here, children's weight gain is dependent variable and ingredient in health drink is independent variable. Weight of 50 children who consume health drink before special ingredient is added to health drink, and weight of same 50 children who consume health drink after special ingredient is added should be recorded for 60 days and studied. In between, due to an epidemic in the area, many children involved in the experiment catch viral fever. Then automatically it affects the weight and it is difficult to Draw conclusion whether how much weight gain or loss can be attributed to special ingredient in health drink or to viral fever. Thus it creates confusion in inference about cause and effect relationship. Here viral fever is a variable which is beyond control of the researcher and occurred during the experiment. Effect on weight due to viral fever is a history which creates difficulty in measuring effect of health drink. Maturation. It is the effect on dependent variable due to passage of time. If the time gap between before and after treatment is considerably large, then it may cause variation in dependent variable. The maturation effect is a result of biological and psychological aspects of an individual respondent. Respondents may lack interest, experience monotony or bored. This will affect dependent variable. In our example, children may not interested to drink it continuously for longer period, say 30 or 60 days. Testing effects. While conducting an experiment, pre-test and post-test measurements for dependent variable are recorded. The first test may influence the response for second test. In other words, while answering pre-test, respondent may become sensitive to the issue and may influence the response for post-test. The pre-test confines the cause and effect relationship of post-test. If an employee answering a pre-test questionnaire about new project and job satisfaction, he may become sensitive to the issue of job satisfaction and post-test responses may be biased. Instrumentation effect. It refers to change in either measuring instrument with which dependent variables are measured or interviewer who conducts experiment. Difference in measuring instrument during pre-test and post-test will affect internal validity. If attitude of employees before and after a soft skill program has to be studied, if set of questions used to elicit response about attitude before and after training program are different, then researcher cannot identify the change in attitude precisely. In other words, different questionnaire used for pre-test and post-test fails to identify the variation accurately. Sometimes pre-test and post-test may be executed by different interviewers, which is a threat for internal validity if inferences are based on different understanding of the subject. Selection bias effect. During experiment, researcher has to select the subject or respondents carefully, keeping in mind the requirement of research. If respondents selected for pre-test and post-test differ, then there will be selection bias affecting internal validity of the experiment. For example, in an organization, manager wants to know the effect of flexi time on performance. In order to know this, he considers 50 full-time employees for pre-test. For post-test, he will select both full-time and part-time employees. Here part-time employees create selection bias effect. Statistical regression. When test units with either highest score or lowest score are selected as respondents for post-test, then the change in dependent variable may be due to regression effect. Regression effect holds that extreme values move towards average. Thus, change in dependent variable cannot be attributed to independent variable, as this may be due to regression effect. If students with highest and lowest marks are the test units for studying the impact of special coaching, then the change in marks may be due to regression effect. Students who have scored highest marks may get less mark and thereby move towards average during post-test. Students who have scored lowest marks may improve and score near the average. Test unit mortality. It occurs when one or more group members or test units discontinue or withdraw from the process of experimentation. The dropouts either in experiment or control group creates difficulty in establishing cause and effect relationship. The variation in dependent variable cannot be measured accurately. For example, if a bank is studying about effect of new pension scheme on retention in between if some employees who opted new pension scheme and are in post-test group, withdraw from scheme and not willing to be a part of group, then there will be test unit mortality and the change in dependent variable cannot be segregated for independent variable or difference in test units. The factors affecting internal validity of an experiment may arise simultaneously. There is no order or rule for its effect. There may be one or two or all factors influencing the experiment. External validity. Aim of any research is to generalize the findings or inferences of research. When research conducted with the sample study units are to be applied practically, then it refers to external validity. The cause and effect relationship found between variables in experimental setting hold good even at real world, then researcher is successful in generalizing it. Some aspects that are threat to external validity of the experimental research are times difference in experimental setting and actual situation wherein generalization is made may be a major threat to external validity of an experiment. If performance shown by employees in experiment during pre-test and post-test before and after skill training may be very positive and actually performance may not raise as like in experimental setting. Times difference in subject or study units from experimental setting and real setting also poses threat to external validity. Subjects selected to review an advertisement impact for a chocolate are of age above 15 that are different from actual subjects which include children of age group 2 to 10. Times difference in treatment at experiment time and actual setting creates threat to external validity. Say for example, while testing a calcium-rich health drink for women at menopause stage, during test it were distributed as chewable tablet and later at actual setting it was in powder form. Times difference in time of test and its applicability also affects external validity. A test for cool drinks sales effect after training salesmen conducted during winter season for 2 weeks will entirely different when it comes to applicability for whole year and at different seasons. Once the researcher is aware about the factors that are influencing the generalizability of the findings or inferences of experiment, he can minimize it by taking suitable care in creating experiment settings, selecting the subject and time frame for experiment. Conclusion: experimental research design is one of the types of research design which facilitates investigator to establish cause and effect relationship among variables by controlling the confounding aspects or external factors to achieve accuracy and validity. Confirming causation is the prerequisite to conduct experimental research. While conducting an experimental research, researcher should control the factors leading to threats for internal and external validity of an experiment. These threats should be removed to achieve high degree of accuracy in drawing inference and its generalization.